included former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He forced the Kiev regime to abandon negotiations in 2022, and he doomed the Ukrainians to the killings, to the death, and clearly he came there to make sure that his idea to have a war till the last Ukrainians is still alive. That came to Kiev, dropped statements on another packages of military assistance. They pompously promised that they will not leave Ukraine high and dry, and it's not important that they did the same many years ago as they prompted the citizens of Ukraine to make a Maidan, to have a coup d'etat that was unconstitutional, then to a civilian standoff, and then there was a chain of provocations that put Ukraine into the abyss of conflict. Ursula von der Leyen promised that in March the EU will give 3.5 billion euros to the Nazi regime. The biggest contribution was pledged by the UK and Canada. Also not lagging behind was Spain, Norway, Denmark, and Switzerland. They promised some 1.8 billion euros. And certainly the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, tried to upstage everyone. On the 24th of February, she claimed that the most solid and the cheapest security guarantee would be Ukraine's NATO membership. And the alliance per se would only benefit from Ukraine filling its ranks, namely by including the most powerful army of Europe. That's how she described the Ukrainian armed forces. And to clarify that, she showcased a banner that was given to her by the 36th separate Marine Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces that participated in the fighting in Mariupol. That is not cynicism, that is immorality. And it all shows that these representatives of the war party continue to cling on to this confrontation line, and they care solely about the interest of their having blissful on Ukrainian membership into NATO. Another statement on hypothetical Ukrainian membership into the alliance was made by Zelensky. Why do they do that? A number of get-togethers and a great number of participants, the same copy-pasted statements and speeches, absurd mottos. Why do they do that? They do it to showcase that it's not as bad as it seems. But everybody understands the reality. They make it seem as if they can improve something, that it's not over yet, they can still keep it afloat. They would keep themselves afloat, given their quality, but the situation is a dead-end street. In his statement at the so-called International Summit in Kiev on the 24th of February, Zelensky said if Ukrainian membership into NATO would remain closed, then Ukraine will have no other choice but to build NATO in Ukraine. Besides ensuring such financing, such troops and defense industry that would mean guaranteed peace. End of quote. The Kiev regime clearly intends to ensure such building at the expense of Europeans, and Western European regimes do not tell that to their citizens. Let us remind you that that's the way it began. This was the trigger so that this domestic inter-Ukrainian standoff could be a concern for the European security when the Ukraine was turned into a NATO foothold. What kind of peace are we talking about? If such, to mark the visit of the European bureaucrats entitled "Let us bring the Zelensky legitimacy back. We're talking about Rada and what happened there on the 24th and 25th of February. I don't want to comment on that because clearly that is a show, definitely. But this show probably has another goal: to distract Ukrainian citizens from the fact that the drafting age will be lowered down even further in Ukraine. Because the state of affairs in the Ukrainian armed forces is deteriorating, and that is something that Ukrainians are not told about. They are only told about European officials that come and go and promise bright future for the citizens of Ukraine. They need to put down these photos, these pictures, and to look at the window, what life shows them, and not the cinema performed by NATO about the losses of the Ukrainian personnel. Instead of that, they use a different tactics. The Kiev junta is considering lowering down the drafting age in mid-February. As you know, a new form of drafting was announced for men of age, namely yearly contracts for volunteers. We need to understand that as they sign these conditions, the young people will get a one-way ticket. The so-called choice is confined to 6 infantry brigades that are at the forefront.
Дронами. This is not computer technologies that are used or within the framework of cyber forces. This is very important. I'll reiterate that. Those are 6 infantry brigades in the front lines. Probably for a civilian, it is not really clear what we're talking about. But those who understand what it means, the infantry brigade, it is clear. Those boys who are drafted in Ukraine, it will mean a momentous, disastrous death. They will be sent for slaughter. Amid all this, the right sector, there were a lot of materials published in the social media, went even further. In the city of Dnepropetrovsk, they put out notices and started to recruit 14-year-old teenagers who had to prepare to kill enemies. The war started by the West, aimed to deplete Ukraine, to strip it of future generations. But for what? To make it more comfortable to give it all away. The sum of bribes that the military commissioners receive is very telling. If the states pay them $100, then they receive $500 for to pay off on the streets. Since they're determined seize on February 28th, military commissioners will get a lot of money, and those who cannot pay off and do not want to die for junta, probably they will be killed from the military brigades of the Ukrainian army. The information about such cases was disclosed by the fighter of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian army. All these facts, they mean that the aims of the special military operation are declared not in vain, and all of them will be achieved. The Russian leadership said many times. The Westerners, they suffer not only from Russophobia, but also against those who think that relationship with our country is a norm or even a priority. Let's see what happened to the president of the Serb Republic, Dodik. We commented on it already, but we want to give more information about it. We share outrage of the public in the Balkans after the court of Bosnia and Herzegovina pronounced a guilty verdict to the president of the Serb Republic, Milorad Dodik. It is another case when policy um, um, prevailed over the law. He only fulfilled his duty under the constitution, and this was interpreted as the violation, quote, of all state legislation, end of quote. That's how the people from the Bosnian justice try to describe the pseudo laws of the German citizen Schmidt. The verdict on this case is illegal and can have no legal consequences. It is clear it is aimed at removing the leader of the Serbian nation from the political scene. His policy is principled and patriotic, and it contradicts the Euro-Atlantic ideas. So we support the efforts of the authorities of the Serb Republic to defend the constitutional status of the Republic under the 1995 General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina for the fundamental principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country, equal rights of three state-forming nations. The Russian Federation, as the permanent member states of the UN Security Council, as a guarantor of the peace agreement, uses all political measures at hand to prevent the situation developing in a negative way and neutralize threats of inter-ethnic dialogue, peace, stability, and threats that can appear in the state and in the Balkans in general, as well as to attract additional attention of the international community to the situation and to bring the situation back to the Dayton framework. One more thing, we took note of demands of the US to upload tankers with Russian oil until February 27. These were demands against India. I would like to say that India officially did not join legitimate restrictions against Russia initiated by the US and its satellites against Russian energy. Given special strategic character of the Russia-India partnership, as well as interests of Russian oil and gas sector, we deem unnecessary and counterproductive to comment on the statements of Washington. But I would like to yet again underline things that we talked many times. Russia denies the unilateral restrictions and measures to put pressure, including against energy, behind the sanction policy of the West. There's a new colonial aspiration to ensure economic advantage and to push other actors and players from world energy markets. We base our cooperation in energy sphere on interests of global energy security, and we responsibly fulfill our contracts and agreements. The third Economic Caspian Forum took place in Tehran on February 17. The event was attended by Prime Minister of Azerbaijan, First Vice President of Iran, Prime Minister of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Deputy Chairman of the Cabinet of Ministers of Turkmenistan. Within the forum, there were 6 round tables. They were dedicated to prospects of the development of trade, industry, agriculture, during The Russian delegation representatives took part in those discussions following the event. A joint communique was issued where the leaders of national delegation showed interest to strengthen interaction of the Caspian states. They welcomed the proposal to conduct meetings about trade in Iran until 2025. The participants of the meeting were thankful for the host to the high-level organization and hospitality. The forum confirmed their stance of the Caspian states to develop interaction. We took note of a number of comments in the Telegram channels that were almost staged. They concerned the resolution of the General Assembly dedicated to the glorification of Nazism. This is an important initiative condemning Nazism in all their manifestations. It is a product of a 20-year work at the UN. For the first time, it was put forward in 2005. It had only a couple of paragraphs and was supported by less than 10 co-sponsors. The promotion of approaches at the international platforms take time. There's no opportunity to, realize all the results overnight. With time, the document received the title that directly explain the essence of the initiative. It is the countering the glorification of Nazism. It received the text. The text became more comprehensive and reflects the position of our country. It expresses serious concern regarding the war against monuments of fighters with Nazism and soldiers liberators, including the desecration and demolition. In some countries, it became a state policy. It confirmed the SS and all its units as a military organization under the verdict of the Nuremberg Tribunal. At the same time, it expresses outrage about torchlight processions and marches to glorify Nazis. This list also includes the inauguration of memorials, renaming of schools and other facilities in honor of those who fought on the side of Nazis. It's concerned about the attempts to nationalize those who fought in the anti-Hitler coalition during World War II. It condemns the attempts of certain countries to prohibit symbols associated with the victory of Nazism. It this negatively influences children and is completely incompatible with the commitments of the UN member states under the UN Charter. Such actions fall under Article 4 of the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. It demands to fight all these manifestations up to prohibiting them by the criminal law. Thus, the result of consistent and perennial work of the Russian delegation, and this continued during all those years, was the endorsement at the UN level of all approaches, principles for us and other like-minded states to do with the preservation of historical truth and countering attempts to falsify the outcomes of the World War II. It is important. Now, 40 countries from all regions of the world are co-sponsors. It is important that it was thematical. It doesn't mention any countries, and the fact that some countries recognized themselves as in the mirror in the text and continue to do so only means that they have these problems at the national level. It's no surprise that the document faces serious resistance from our opponents. This is of utmost importance for those who write about it. Over 20 years, the US, Canada, Japan, Great Britain, Switzerland, Australia, Norway, Ukraine, and the EU countries always voted against or abstained from voting and attempted to make countries of the global south not to support it. For many of them, the country in this particular text became the main issue. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. The main aim in the discussions at the UN in 2022, their attack against the resolution a little changed. They failed during the voting, so they decided to use another tactic of the procedural provocation to spread the anti-Russian paragraph about inadmissibility to justify the territorial aggression against Ukraine. They used all their transatlantic solidarity to do so. Why did they wanted to do it? They wanted to make us, Russia, to refuse from the document. They dreamt about it. They talked about it openly, even. Russia, in case it was fulfilled, wound up in the company with those who prevented the endorsement of the text by the General Assembly. This paragraph does not make the text of the resolution acceptable for our opponents. They understand that the resolution is still the same, so they continue to vote against it anyways. But they have another goal. They wanted to this text to disappear. In this situation, Russia, together with like-minded states, decided not to give in to this provocation. Every year, we put forward this paragraph up to the voting, and when it is endorsed, we distance officially ourselves from this paragraph that is unacceptable for us. It is reflected in the protocol of the session of the UN General Assembly. It is stored in the UN archives and is available on all resources of the organization. I would like to draw your attention to this fact. Neither Russia nor other co-sponsors are not tied by the text of this paragraph. And when we never talked about supporting it, we work steadily against this provocation and this unacceptable paragraph for those with common sense. It loses support, and we hope that it will be eliminated in the nearest future. And this meticulous work gives fruit. In 2022, 63 countries voted for it, 23 against, 65 countries abstained. But last time, in December 2024, the number of voters remained the same, but the number of opponents almost doubled. Against 41 delegations were against, 50 abstained. We're convinced that Russia shouldn't give up its positions in the fight against glorification of Nazism at the UN. But where are we to fight, if not in the country, in the organization that appeared following the destruction of Nazism? Not always victory comes immediately, and we don't always manage to achieve our goals immediately, but we have to fight. And sometimes we have to combine both desire to settle the situation momentarily and meticulous work. We fight through diplomatic means for the interests of our country, but we also unite the international community on this important issue. We continue working on the resolution, not a week before it is up to the voting. We fight the amendment to the resolution, not an hour before the voting, but every day. Did those provocators know about it, including in the Russian information space? They did not. Do you want to help? Let us unite our capabilities, potential, and resources. I'm talking about the media resources who mentioned this topic only one time.
Do you want to cooperate? Just address us, say that, or maybe we will say that to you. I would like to say that all these speeches by representatives of the delegations are openly published. Russian diplomats have commented in detail what I have mentioned just now to different media outlets. They have clarified procedural aspects, substantial issues connected with our activities in the UN, and we're grateful to journalists, bloggers, and experts who cover this issue highly professionally. We intend to continue to make efforts to counter the historical aggression against our country, unleashed by some countries. One more important issue, we have had several brief announcements today, and we will provide a detailed material after the briefing and in the briefing text. There will be the second stage of the SCO International Chess Tournament. We have already mentioned its first stage during the briefing on the 18th of December 2024. There were more than 3,000 people from more than 10 SCO countries. It will be possible to participate both online and offline. The second stage will be joined by even more participants, and there will be another stage of the tournament on My Chess platform, and there will be participants from more than 15 countries. The final of the tournament will take place in July 2025. We will provide links in the text of the today briefing, and we invite all the chess players to participate in this landmark event. On the soon it will be an anniversary of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and we will publish a detailed material on our website. And cultural humanitarian cooperation from the 26th of February until the 2nd of March. Now, exhibition fair of folk arts and crafts is held of our entire motherland, Russia, Spring Fantasy, Ladia. There are many questions. Just visit Ladia, this exhibition, and you will have a look what we protect, what we fight for, what is vital for us. And the National Center of Russia, from the 28th until the 3rd of April, is to hold an open dialogue, the future of the world, a new platform for global growth, on changes, and there will be 4 main themes: investing in people, investing in technology, investing in environment, and investing in connectivity. We invite everyone who wishes to participate to provide their ideas on the growth of the global economy in essay format until the 9th of March 2025. We reassure you that all the links will be posted in the briefing text. The authors of the best essays will be invited to participate in person at National Center Russia from the 28th until the 30th of April 2025. There will be the delegation visiting and Vientiane Days in Moscow, held with the support of the Department of Foreign Economic and International Relations of our capital. It will be a possibility to study the history of Laos in detail, and the Moscow Chamber of Trade and Industry will hold a business forum and presentation exhibition of Lao goods. The participants will discuss cooperation in tourism, culture, trade, IT technologies, energy, and Vientiane Days will become a platform for further cultural exchange and strengthening ties in business sphere. It will be the continuation of the tradition like Days of Moscow in Vientiane that were held last year in 2024, and it will be an important milestone in the cultural life of the city and our international relations. We also have the anniversary of the relations between the USSR and the Holy See. Two countries that are not similar at all have made a step towards each other, trying to establish dialogue and cooperation. A lot of experience has been accumulated in cooperation in science, culture, education, history, archive, healthcare. Now the dialogue is based on mutual respect, traditional values, and preserving the civilizational identity. We support the efforts of the Holy See and Pope Francis in person for conflict settlement, and we value the deeply balanced approach of the Holy See to settle the Ukrainian crisis, to resolve the crisis, and we are very concerned about a recent report from the Holy See Press Office of the Pontiff's deteriorating health. We wish him good health, and we and our relations will further be based on aspirations for a more just world order and respect for our mutual interests. Now, regarding Vasily Safranchuk, a renowned diplomat, we will publish a material about him. Now your questions, please. International Life. Hello, Madam Zakharova. Bloomberg agency has recently reported that the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, addressed Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the issue of ensuring sanctions against Russia. How could you comment on this information? It's just literally a shame for the European Commission and this aggressive West. Now to visit different countries that are not part of the European Union and to beg for some similarity, something similar to their anti-Russian actions. We see clearly that the global majority, and of course India, just to have adequate assessments of this aggressive policy of Brussels and condemn interference in domestic affairs of other countries. Now, regarding the pressure, we're sure that our partners will continue mutually beneficial economic relations with our country. It's just a shame for, in brackets, enlightened West to visit countries that they call just wild jungle, to beg them to support this beautiful garden in their frenzy. One more question. On the 19th of February, Moldovan Minister of Foreign Affairs Mikhail Popshoy said that the Moldovan authorities decided to terminate the 1998 Russian-Moldovan intergovernmental agreement on cultural centers, as the Russian House in Chisinau allegedly works to undermine the statehood and sovereignty of the Republic of Moldova. How would you comment on this? You know, as of today, the Moldovan side has not provided any official statements about the termination of this 1998 agreement on cultural centers. It's just obvious that any information about alleged undermining the statehood and sovereignty is just absurd. The Russian House attracts many Moldovan citizens, 80% just speak Russian in daily life. It's just a platform for events, strengthening contacts and ties between people. What is the problem with this? What is unclear? Those events, they are public, they are open. People attend them. There is video and photo coverage of those events. Why inventing that? The cynicism of Moldovan officials aimed at the Russian House is based on the authorities having done their best in order to destroy their own sovereignty, the sovereignty of their own country and the national identity of Moldovans. Let me cite some examples. According to estimations of local experts, in Moldova there are about 10,000 non-governmental organizations fully or partly financed by the collective West. Some senior officials in Moldova have worked in those non-governmental organizations, and in recent years, the amount of their support only by Washington has amounted to around $950 million. So now they're talking about our exhibitions and concerts. It's connected with interference in internal affairs of foreign states that USA just labeled by the Americans themselves for being corrupt, for being irresponsible. And the territory of Moldova is used for military drills with the participation of servicemen from NATO countries. It's a blow against sovereignty and independence. The process of violent Romanization of Moldova is underway, and people from Bucharest getting official posts, government posts, and now it's just the Russian House. They say that's an obstacle for them. According to surveys, more than 60% of Moldovans are against the practice of Romanization. Unprecedented debt slavery of Moldova with the current government, the so-called plan of growth of Moldova of 1.9 billion euro, and they keep silence about the lion's share of this sum. 1.5 billion euro is loans, and they will have to return those loans. And what's the debt of the current Moldovan officials? It's around $7 billion. That's why the sovereignty is undermined. The Russian House, with its enlightenment and humanitarian mission. So we hope that the Moldovan leadership will demonstrate common sense and avoid the closure of the Russian House that would be contrary to the interests of many Moldovan citizens. Is Maria Novosti with us? Yes. Hello, Madam Zakharova. We have two questions. One of them we have already mentioned that. How would you comment on Weimar Plus meeting on the 12th of February and the Paris meeting on the 17th of February on support for Ukraine? Well, we see many statements from Brussels, the capital of Europe, about the main topic, the escalation of conflict and avoiding any peaceful initiatives. That's the major idea that accompanies any event. It's an admissible peaceful settlement. It's just a priority, it's just an aim, a target for Brussels. They openly say that they will sabotage any deal, any process, negotiations process in any way. Now they have invented a story about sabotage, non-participation in negotiations process. It's just harmful for themselves. It's just stopping a train, by stepping on the railway. It's the same thing. The peacekeeping efforts of the EU countries, what they have done before, France, Germany, Poland, they have provided guarantees. They were called guarantees during the agreements of President Yanukovych with opposition in February 2014. How many did the guarantees last? Less than 24 hours, several hours? In 2015, the UN Security Council approved the package of measures for the implementation of the Minsk agreements. What did Angela Merkel say afterwards? They were not going to implement those and just use them to prepare the Kiev regime for war. They just called upon avoiding any negotiations with Russia to promote the forceful settlement on the battlefield, supported the so-called peace formula of Zelensky, and then the harm formula, that's what they call their participation in the settlement of the situation. We remember that. To remain the main proponent of the war in Ukraine and to require their specific role in peaceful process is just impossible. They just need to make the decision. It's just callous rhetoric, offensive statements, some ill Russophobia. It would be possible to speak about any input of Brussels into Ukrainian settlement without that. If you allow me the second question. In the media, Abkhazia is widely discussed based on the second round of presidential elections on the 1st of March. How would you comment on this topic? We closely follow the development of situation in Abkhazia because it is connected with Russia with longer friendly ties. We cooperate with those citizens, provide cooperation to those who have Russian citizenship in a comprehensive manner. The telemedia center has been inaugurated in a local Republican hospital. The medical examination of Abkhazia school children has been launched. It will facilitate further development of Abkhazia and create conditions for Russian tourists visiting this country. Regarding the elections, the Russian side will send observers on the invitation of Sukhum, and they will monitor the process of voting. Yes, unfortunately, after the November unrest, the domestic situation has not stabilized to a full extent in the Abkhazia. And we hope that any citizens will have a possibility to freely vote for his candidate, and it will be in compliance with national legislation and common democratic norms, and it will be in accordance with the values of all the political forces. It's the electoral process based on a law, and we hope it will lead to the growth and prosperity, and prosperity based on friendly alliance relations with Russia. Thank you. Is Ukraina.ru with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. Thank you for this possibility to ask this question. I represent Ukraina.ru media outlet. Why do you think Britain is so aggressive towards Russia, as actually the Biden administration has taken this stance before? We have no territorial economic disputes with Britain. Why such an aggressive stance?
Why do you think that we don't have territorial and economic disputes? What do you mean by territorial disputes? You consider it in an old-fashioned way, since we're not neighbors, we don't have a common border, but why do you think that they have a different perspective? Why don't you think that London and all these Russophobic British elites consider Russia as their territory? Why don't you think that they consider resources in our territory as resources that they need, and from their viewpoint, we are not entitled to these resources? Why don't you consider the territorial claims in such a context? From a legal standpoint, maybe you don't see such an interpretation. However, from the historical truth standpoint, that's their treatment of the situation. What is ours should be theirs. That's the way they see it. You see, that is a colonial approach. Never in the history have they failed to subdue our country, to destroy it, to take it by force, to conquer it, and so on and so forth. But they have always aspired to do that. That is why I kindly ask you to take a broader outlook to this language. As for the economic disputes, we do have these disputes. If they impose sanctions, that means that they are not happy with win-win cooperation partnership. That means that they don't need that. However, that is exactly what we suggested to them. Why so? Then let's get back to the first point. They don't consider our territory as the area that should be ruled by our people, by our nation, and they deprive us of the rights to use our resources. Madam Zakharova, thanks a lot. And a brief question. Could the UK be kind of a trigger for war against Russia in Ukraine? I don't quite get what you mean. We say that they are an unfriendly regime, and that's the way they behave. Thank you. The Moscow Post, are you here with us? Hello, we have 3 questions right now. Can we expect that unrealized Kizil-Kuragina railroad could be part of Russia-China-Mongolia pathway? And what is the take of Chinese and Mongolian neighbors to this project? You know, the implementation of various projects that you've mentioned are within the purview of the economic sector of the Russian government. You can ask a question there. This issue is being considered by the parties of interest, but only our financial and economic center could give detailed comment in this regard. Thank you. The next question. Press Secretary of the Azerbaijan Foreign Ministry said that Russia Today office is closed. Previously, Baku closed the Russian house. What is happening? We keep in touch with the Azeri side on this issue, and we outlined our position to the colleagues in Azerbaijan on this very important issue to us. I believe that it is important for Baku as well. We look forward to constructive response, and by joining hands, we'll be able to reach some win-win solutions, and we hope that our partners will be guided by allied nature of Russia-Azerbaijan relations, and they will abstain from doing damage to bilateral ties that are versatile between our countries and peoples. We hear and understand the rationale. The law is the law. There's no contesting it, but we can always find win-win solutions and ways to resolve the situation. That is why I do not see any contradiction here between abiding by the law and normal, mutually respectable relations to resolve the situation. Thank you. And the third question. For the first time, the US refused to co-sponsor an anti-Russian resolution at the UNGA. Washington came up with its own document, not accusing Russia. As Nebenzia said, this project was distorted and the US refused from voting. Could you please get an idea of what is happening? We commented on that several times. There is a written comment of the Foreign Ministry as well as oral explanations. I just can provide you detailed information and publish it today. That would be great. Thank you. Izvestia, are you here with us? So far, hello, hi. Slovakia could follow the example of the US and demand compensating for the money spent on Ukraine. According to the Speaker of the Parliament, 3.5 billion euros were sent to Ukraine. What other countries could follow that lead, and what would the Kyiv authorities do in this case? The Kyiv authorities should think not about claims launched against them. That is a secondary issue, unfortunately, although it is very important because we are talking about a huge burden for the Ukrainian citizens. But the primary question here and the real problem here is how to keep the Ukrainian population alive, because the Zelensky and everything that he does is for the benefit of the Ukrainian citizens. But turns out that there is no Ukrainian people whatsoever due to the actions of Zelensky. There is mobilization of 18-year-olds in Ukraine, and they even want to go as far as mobilizing 14 years old. That is the main point of the agenda. As for the claims, what are you talking about? We're talking about selling Ukraine and Ukrainian people into some kind of an inhumane slavery. Why am I talking about inhumane slavery? Because previously, well, it was condemned as something that is unacceptable. And second of all, it was local. Currently, slavery in Ukraine is in a 3D format. They sell the lives of current Ukrainians. They sell the lives of future generations of citizens of Ukraine and the lands. That's the answer to your question. They sell the sources, natural resources of Ukraine, and as well as the land and prospective resources. There's understanding that there might be additional resources. That's what it is. A new form of slavery that is being trained and tested in Ukraine as an experiment by Western so-called mentors. Thank you for your answer. Media Corporation of China, are you here with us? Hello. We have one question. Foreign Minister 1E. of China repeatedly stated that China supports all efforts aimed at achieving peace, including the recent consensus that was stricken between the US and Russia. China also urges all the parties to take part in peaceful negotiations. Does Russia consider a possibility of peaceful negotiations that would engage Ukrainian representatives in the upcoming future, and at what stage will it be possible? You see, this stage doesn't start today or yesterday or tomorrow. If we talk about negotiations, this path has always been a priority for us. That's what we've been highlighting every time. And we have always stated that under the pressure of Western mentors, Kiev refused to have a negotiating process. If we talk about contacts, I've already commented on that. Contacts with Americans, the primary goal is to unblock, unfreeze the contacts per se. Globally speaking, I've already given the answer to your question. Thank you. Reuters, are you here with us? Hello, Madam Zakharova. We have two questions today. The first one has to do with negotiations in Istanbul between Russia and the US. All too often they speak about irritants and two countries intend to resolve them. Besides the work of diplomatic missions, what are the irritating factors that exist for Russia? What factors are mentioned by the US? Who represents Russia at these negotiations? I would give you a general answer to this question because all the details are being considered right now. The main irritant is that these contacts were blocked absolutely. You do remember that negotiations were not happening either in person or by phone at the foreign ministers level, at the expert level. Our delegations were not meeting at the international platforms with all the consequences. On top of that, you do remember that it went as far as citizens of countries due to the Obama-Biden tandem. Citizens who are refused to meet their primary requests. I'm talking about visas, issuing visas and other documents, but for some of them, we're talking about essential, vital things. There's a lack of opportunity to just talk to each other. Once there is a conversation, there is a chance to seek common ground or to seek mutual understanding. When everything is blocked, what can we talk about? Who represents Russia at these negotiations? We will clarify that a bit later. These are foreign ministry representatives in charge of Russia-US relations. Thank you. And the second question that has to do with relations with Ukraine. President Putin of Russia recently has said that Russia is interested in seeing Ukraine as a friendly neighboring state at the end of the day. How could this transformation happen, according to Moscow? And if a new president of Ukraine, just like Zelensky, will be hostile with regard to Russia? You know, the most surprising thing is that I hear this question from Reuters. How come? Or why so? Because Reuters is linked to the history of Britain, of the British Empire. Currently, it is a media outlet holding of the Anglo-Saxon world. It includes Canada and the North Atlantic region, as we call it. Do tell me, you know the history of the country, of the media where you've been working, and you know it perfectly well. Otherwise, you will not have a job there. You know the history of the US. It started, on the one hand, as a history of a joint state that spent a lot of years fighting. Moreover, these were not just a joint state, these were brothers, these were families and close relatives, friends, representatives of the same social groups. And the fighting was vicious. And this war lasted not for several years, but for 13 years, if I'm not mistaken. And by the way, it happened more than once. First from 1775 to 1983, then there was another standoff in early 19th century, 1912. I would not list everything. Incidentally, I would like to read out a quote from the British Encyclopedia, The Tragedy of the Birth of the US. That's what it states. For England and for the US is that the dark recollections were not about Anglo-American War, but about its consequences. And these recollections for 1.5 centuries spoiled and intoxicated the ties between the two races. What do we see now? Closest alliance, friendly relations, relative relations, a tandem, call it as you may, between London and Washington. But there are certain details. Yet England and the US are closest allies. Not for the first time, neighbors and common countries were part of this conflict, tragic stories, and they resolved it. I would not repeat the history of Russia, and I would not delve into detail. I believe that you heard it time and again, including what our president said. But once again, let me emphasize that there is the experience of the international community, both in recent history and modern history, on how the most dire conflicts could be overcome. It's not that I wanted to give you this specific example. It's just that you represent a media outlet, the country of origin of whose went through this ordeal. Thanks a lot. The news front. Are you here with us? Hello. International news agency Newsfront, a Bulgarian outlet. If I may, I have two questions. The first one, President of France, Emmanuel Macron, claimed that many countries in the EU and outside the EU are ready to send troops to Ukraine as guarantees for the signing of the peace treaty. In the majority of European countries, people strongly against sending troops to Ukraine. What is the Russian stance on this statement by Macron? Everybody is talking about the statement by Macron, and I get an impression that this is some kind of a meme. When somebody says the statement by Macron, everybody starts smiling, and it has some, well, sense to it because he contradicts himself. Sometimes it's wishful thinking. The other thing is that when I answered the previous question, I said that unfortunately, Western Europe and the EU has failed its functions as a guarantor of anything on the European continent over the past decade, and I gave you specific examples to that. Probably we can deliberate on that, and for that to happen, they could present some kind of a success story, how they successfully guaranteed something to somebody, and in that case, we could understand what they are talking about. And last but not least, let us advise them not to ponder in hypothetical terms, but to use the current realities on the ground, building upon their past experience, and given the fact that they should be responsible for what they say. Let us wish them this. Thank you. And the second question, if I may, it has to do with 147th anniversary of the liberation of Bulgaria from Russian and Turkish war. There is a national holiday in Bulgaria, and this war is sacred in the history of our countries. Since, thanks to the fraternal victory that resulted in our independence, we continue to cherish it, and we appreciate the liberator soldiers. We cherish historical memory, and we look forward to the celebration on March 3rd. And a question to this regard: given this historic date, will there be any official congratulations via diplomatic or other official channels, and what is needed to revitalize Russia-Bulgaria dialogue at the official level to have positive development of our bilateral relations, and what can you wish to Bulgarian people on this occasion? You are right, the national holiday of Bulgaria is inextricably linked with Russia. It is celebrated on March the 3rd, the day of the signing of the peaceful treaty following the war of 1877-1878. The war resulted in a long-awaited freedom, and it restored the peace on the Bulgarian state with the selfless assistance of the Russian Empire. Those who want to understand the genuine spirit of Russia, Bulgaria, friendship and relations and mutual understanding should visit the Shipka monument to see how important this holiday is. We thank many Bulgarian citizens who cherish the memory of Russian soldiers.
That's why the wish from the outside to destroy Russia-Bulgaria relations, both within in Bulgaria, there's anti-Russian, Russophobe minority. There's vandalism against our monuments, our joint monuments. There have been a lot of things. There were attempts to prohibit annual events in Shipka. There was a proposal from Bulgaria to change the date, but I hope that it won't happen because we cannot rewrite Russia. Over the last year, the diplomats in Bulgaria do not receive invitations, and history cannot be rewritten. It can be only truthful, otherwise it's lies to ourselves. The practice of mutual greetings was suspended by the Bulgarian side. I do not want to enumerate all those Russophobe actions, but I would like to use the opportunity and to congratulate our Bulgarian friends and brothers with the upcoming anniversary. We wish them everything good. We are tied by our common values, spiritual heritage. That is a key factor that define the Russia-Bulgaria relations. I know that this will be this way. Is Anadolu with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova, good afternoon. We have the questions about the Middle East. The first one, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, recently said that the Israeli army will still be present in the Golan Heights for indefinitely. It means that Israel attacks on the facilities in Syria continue. How does Moscow evaluate actions of Israel? We talked many times that we believe that Syria's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity should be respected, and everyone should comply with the norms of the international law, and to prevent further escalation. It concerns Israel as well, who violate the Syria-Israel agreement of 1974. We're seriously concerned about the situation, and because it further destabilizes the situation that is already quite difficult in the country. Question 2. Israel continues to block humanitarian aid to Gaza Strip. As a result, 6 babies died, according to Hamas. How does Moscow evaluate these actions of Israel? As far as I understand, humanitarian aid continue to come to Gaza Strip. We also already answered your question to your outlet. We called on all the parties and continue doing so to comply with the deal signed in February, signed earlier. I have only this information for now. And the last question, if I may, it's also about Gaza. President of the US, Donald Trump, showed a video where On and Netanyahu have arrested in Gaza. Is it going to deteriorate the situation in Gaza somehow? I think that in the first question, even in the context of another country, I said the key phrase: we have to do everything not to deteriorate, but to improve the situation. These tactics of the White House, such way of expressing things, such challenges, we'll see what this will lead and how it is going to contribute to the improvement of the situation. And I would like to hope so. It's too early to judge and to jump to any conclusions. Let us give them some time so that we can comment on with facts. But until the administration in the White House works only for 2 months, so let us wait and comment on later. I would like to say that Palestinians themselves should express their opinion about this. Colleagues, I have an opportunity to answer only one question. I know that there are a lot of questions and we'll answer them individually. Let us answer the question to Lenta.ru. Good afternoon. We have a couple of questions. The leader Friedrich Merz, who talked about the support to Ukraine. He talked about the restoration of relations with Russia. How serious, in your opinion, are these statements, and what can we expect of the German government in general? Sergei Lavrov commented on this only yesterday. First, again, we define our role in history and in the situation by ourselves. It is defined by our constitution, and it is not us who should give such evaluations. Probably he started to expand his constituency. I don't know. We identified ourselves. We put everything down in the main law in the country. So I don't see an opportunity to further comment on this. For self-determination, you don't have to look somewhere. This is an important element of self-identification. We know our history. That's why we care about it. That's why we are prepared to defend it. We know how we want to see our country in future. We can say that we agree with some evaluations, with some we don't, but we don't have to hear from others who we are. We know it very well. We articulated it on our own, and we also put it down in our own constitution. We are a country and a civilization. As to the outcomes of the elections, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, commented on it only yesterday, and the outcome say that the policies of the previous administration weren't didn't age well, and I won't go into statistics of the voting. Our embassy in Berlin commented on that and on them. As to the statements of the presidential candidates, they were political. Now, statesmen are going to make statements, so we will proceed, and from their statements and from certain steps that they're going to take against our country in particular. We never looked for a conflict with anyone. The deterioration in relations with Germany happened not because of us, and the philosophy and policy of Berlin will be followed by us and considered. We didn't receive any signs about their interests to restore interstate dialogue. That's all I can say for now. Colleagues, I would like to wrap up the briefing. Everyone who sent us questions earlier, you will find your answer.